Good afternoon and welcome to the February 21st meeting of the Radnor Township School District Curriculum Committee meeting. And I'd like to begin by inviting Dr. McQuiggan to give us some administrative remarks and introductions.
Thank you very much. So tonight on our agenda we have 4 items. We are going to look at the 17-18 proposed academic calendar. We're also going to talk a little bit about state testing and the religious exemption procedure. We have our usual mid-year report on goals from the curriculum department. And then also we're going to do a preview of the English language arts audit by looking at some of the data we've collected so far regarding our English learner program. There was a question posed when we were here last time about middle school football and contact sports regarding middle school students, and I did post a short handout on the website that provides that information, that the middle school students are divided into 2 teams, one being students from the middle school who weigh under 115 pounds, and the other being obviously students who weigh more than 115 pounds. And then also in an effort to prevent or handle head injuries, the coaches also receive concussion training. So that they can handle those particular impact procedures as needed for middle school football. Announcement about summer school. We have our summer school program postings are up on the website. We are going to be offering the same 3 programs at the high school that we have in the past. We are also offering our summer reading camp again this year, which invitations will be going out at spring conferences to students in kindergarten to grade 3 who are reading below grade level mid-year or at the end of the year. And then our English learner literacy program is for all of our students who are identified as ELL, which we fund through Title III. We run our own in-house extended school year, which we've started planning for. And then new this year, Dr. Murray's also going to be offering a middle school STEM camp. We're going to give that a try for our middle school students. We will not be offering the theater program this year. So we offered it the last 2 summers. We had some generous funding from the Radnor Education Foundation. Mr. Kearney put his heart and soul into it, got up there on stage with everyone, but we just didn't have the following after 2 years to continue to fund it at what it was costing us to put it forward. So our conclusion from that is that the programs running locally seem to be enough to meet the needs of the students in our school district, and we hope that they find a wonderful place for with one of those programs over the summer. So we tried.
It's wise. Try it. If it doesn't work, try something else.
2 years. 2 years. So the students who participated, had a great experience, but we just didn't have the numbers to support it. I'd like to make an announcement about a joint PTO-PTSA meeting, which is going to occur at the middle school on March 1st, and Mr. Batcher will be joining us, and then we're also going to be doing a presentation, myself and some of the folks in the curriculum department and some of our teachers, about state testing. We'll be talking a little bit about what that looks like, what the experience is like for our students, and how our teachers use the data on an individual student level. Our PTO parents shared with us that this is a topic that our parents are very interested in hearing more about, so we've been working together with them to put together a presentation that will answer some of the questions they have. So we'll have a meet and greet starting at 6:30, and the presentation will start at 7 o'clock, and it will be open to parents from kindergarten through 12th grade. We also have a joint speaker engagement. There's some flyers out on the counter. Mr. Eckel will be here doing a presentation on his new book, and all the funds raised from that project are going to be going to the public library. So that will be at the middle school as well, and we'll be working with them to organize some of those logistics. And just a preview to next month, we're going to hear from our librarians who are starting also as part of the English language arts audit. They are working on a diversity audit of our curriculum, or not our curriculum, of our library collections, looking at our collections across the district and seeing how representative they are of the different types of groups and cultures that we want to portray for our students. And then Dr. Murray is also going to be talking about the FACS audit next month, Family and Consumer Science. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment. Welcome, Dr. Winters.
Welcome. Is that working now?
Yes.
You have an incredibly busy agenda, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would like you, when you look at the calendar, I noticed that the K-5 has a number of early dismissals, which is wise for elementary students who get up early and like to run around. At the same time, I would like you to look, when you do testing or exams and things like that, to seriously consider having later openings for the secondary students, because research has shown that they're probably much more productive if they go to school after 9 o'clock than at 7:30 in the morning. So I think you might want to consider having some later openings at the high school if that could be worked into the schedule. I would also hope that as you look at the goals that are presented here for review, that I know the first one is in regard to staffing adjustments, and in light of the budget situation, I'm sure you'll be looking at that closely in terms of how that impacts the overall district profile and budgetary constraints. I trust, in addition to having the statement about middle school football, which I think was probably very helpful to the public, that perhaps at the same time parents should be informed about the potential risks of having kids of a young age involved in full contact sports. So I think that would be a nice piece to put in with it, so that parents would have information about which to make choices when they choose to have their children participate in middle school or high school football. And finally, I would like to commend you for including the information about our English Language Learner Program. I know, having taught at Ithan Elementary School, what a difference it made to our community, as well as to our other students, and I think it's important to be a welcoming school in a world that needs people who welcome others. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Spurtle.
Hello, Ms. Michelson. Good evening, Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. The religious exemption from state testing was a new piece of information for me. I didn't realize that. I thought it might be the content of the exams, and I understand that it means they don't take test periods. So that was something that was learning for me, the content. On the mid-year goals and updates, and I know you're going to go through all of these, and I'm hoping that in the update of things you've completed, a cost-benefit analysis of contracted versus in-house EL services, and since there's quite a bit of information included, I thought that might be forthcoming. And then also the report that compared most recent best practices to Radnor Township School District current EL programming, whether there's any results on that and what you learned. And also on the gifted students, I'm hoping you'll go over the results of some of those surveys and studies that were done. And just curious, I noticed you're not going to do the summer theater program, but there was a research was completed on theater programs in universities, the community, and school districts, and what the results of that research showed. The information on the EL services in RTSD was very informational to me, and was very interesting to see the different countries that are represented, and how low the numbers are, and some I thought would be very high. So that was quite interesting. And one other comment in following on Dr. Winter's comment, thank you for the information on the football. But I also read a very interesting article that said that tackle football versus flag football, there are more injuries in flag than there are in tackle. They're different injuries, but they don't wear any protective headgear or shoulders or covering of the body when they play flag, and there are therefore more injuries, which was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Approval of our minutes. They look good to me.
Yes.
All right, very good. Okay, agenda item number 1, the district calendar as proposed.
Thank you. Okay, so you have a copy of the district calendar in front of you, and I'm just going to draw your attention to a few of the different notable calendar events. As we were chatting before the meeting started, we have 181 seat time student days planned and 191 teacher days per our teacher contract. Our first student day will again be the Tuesday after the Labor Day weekend on September 5th. And then you'll also notice, as far as professional development goes, we have 2 more math and focus days planned. We had talked about this last year when we made the commitment to, kind of the Cadillac math and focus professional development that we had talked about, that with the sub situation, it really does require we use an in-service day to get training to that many teachers. So we have 2 in-service days planned specifically for math and focus, which will be November 6th and also April 2nd. And then we have the little orange boxes with the slash in them. And they are half-day release days for our elementary teachers. We've always had 3 of those days in the past, and they coincide with the end of the trimester for our elementary teachers. And they've been called assessment days in the past. But one of the issues we've been having over the past year or two is it's become increasingly difficult to get collaboration time for our elementary teachers, particularly for them to do work at the building level with their colleagues and with their principal, and to also work together as grade levels on things like their new math program and flexible grouping and things like that. So we've built 3 of those into the calendar this year, so they'll have their 3 assessment days, and then they'll have 3 additional half days. Again, we've worked with the PTO and some of our other community groups to try to select days that will be convenient to parents and also most conducive to the instructional programming. So one of the ones we added, for instance, is on October 31st, which is a day that's usually filled with lots of exciting events. So that will be a half day where our teachers will have some time to work at the building level to collaborate in the afternoon. Class of 2018 graduation is June 13th, a little bit later than it was in the past, but according to Byron, who is our child accounting person in the district, he said it makes it much easier for us to meet our guidelines regarding the specific number of days and hours we need, particularly for our seniors. We have 1 weather emergency day built in, and then others would follow following the last student day, and you'll see there's still a Friday there left, the 15th, so really we could easily get 2 weather emergency days made up and still be able to close the school year that Friday, the 15th of June. Does anyone have any specific questions about the calendar or anything that wasn't clear when you reviewed it?
I know you just said this, but what are they doing? All right, so we have 3 half-day assessment days, and what are they going to do on the other 3 half-days again?
Those will be 3 elementary professional development days, and they will be collaboration days. So what we hear from the principals is that it's very, very difficult to carve out any extended period of time to work with their staff. And in the past, we've done this using things like rolling subs, like we would take a team of subs, and we could pull the first grade teachers for 2 hours, and then those subs could go to second grade. We just don't have the sub staff to be able to do that anymore. Even when we try to have vertical team meetings and things like that, many of the meetings we've scheduled this year have either been very poorly attended or have had to be canceled completely.
Okay, thank you.
And so how does that affect our student day count?
That will not affect our student day count because I have a total of 186 days with our Act 80 days that'll count for student days, but we still have 181 days of seat time for students.
Okay, but so some of these half days count
as a full day.
days.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
All right. But is it in fact a reduction in student time in the chair or not?
From 2 years ago, it's a reduction of about a day.
Okay.
But remember, that's part of that is the compromise we're making with the math and focus. So those two of those days, 2 full days, will be added back in next year. So
Okay.
next year we should actually be increasing seat time over what we had before we started math and focus. And the other thing is, remember, by doing this, we definitely have increased the seat time for our middle school students and our high school students, because we don't need all our high school students to stay home so that we can have math and focus training for K to 8.
Okay.
So I think, it was a good compromise. We're still working with Michelle on the busing and some of the challenges there. But really, we've tried some very creative things with substitutes this year, and we really have not been able to relieve the struggle that's there. Not being able to have people come in. And then remember, if you plan to pull a team of teachers, if you want to work with first grade teachers on math and focus, and only half of those teachers get substitute teachers, your choice is either you cancel the professional development session or you compromise that instructional day for those students anyway by combining classes. And, we really want to get away from doing that. We'd rather do the half day. We can work with K to 5 all on one day. We can accomplish these tasks. The next day, students are back in class with their regular teacher in front of them.
Okay. The Halloween choice, that subject came up, and I was wondering, does that compromise the traditional parade and all that the elementary kids do?
The parade will be in the morning.
Okay.
And it will be still be on Halloween. We did talk with the PTOs. Most of them were very excited about it, saying that they feel the day is rushed anyway, because by the time they get the kids off the bus and they quick feed them something to eat, they're rushing out to do their trick-or-treating. There was a concern about preschools, because I think a lot of the preschoolers have their parades in the morning because the elementary schools have them in the afternoon. So Mr. Robarczyk has a mailing list of our local preschools, and he's going to reach out to them and let them know what this plan is for next year. So hopefully maybe they can do first thing in the morning, and we'll do right before dismissal or something like that. We'll be able to coordinate.
Oh, good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia?
To confirm, so the November 6 and 7, I think they are in service?
Yes.
They have to be there in November, because it's the end of that.
Well,
The 7th is Election
The
Day.
7th is Election Day, and that's
That's not
that's
moving.
also our
Okay.
countywide in-service day. That's what we call our vertical team days, when our art teachers and our music teachers and people who teach where we have fewer staff members, they're able to get together with people from across the county that day. So by adding the 6th in there, we felt it would be less disruptive to the student week and also less disruptive for parents, because it would be more connected to something else.
Is that the same thing with May 15th? Is that a primary day?
Let me look here. Oh, yes, it is. And we've come to school on those in the past. We've kind of gone back and forth, but I think the last time we tried it, we decided that that was a no.
And to Roberta Winter's point about the delay, I see that none of these are late openings or early dismissals for the high school.
Well, in the individual schedule of the high school for like midterms and finals, that's usually determined by the high school themselves, so they'll still have an opportunity to take a look at that.
Okay.
So it's a school day. Even the exam days tend to float around a little bit depending on if we have snow or things like that. So they're not set in stone until a little bit later, past the time that this is approved.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry-
hello.
Sorry, I'm late. Yeah, and I didn't have a chance to grab my prior years in front of me. So just summary-wise, half-days have been problematic for parents, and we tried to get rid of half-days wherever possible. So how does this compare to prior years?
Well, what we did this time is we worked with the
Sorry, did
PTOs
everybody
to
talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We worked with the PTOs to identify days that we felt would fit into the calendar and be a little bit more of a natural break, something like Halloween, where, parents might already be planning things in the evening or may already be at school for
Right,
special
but what's
events.
the count?
Oh, our count is still 181.
In terms of the number of half-days in this calendar versus previous years and half-days?
We've always had 3 half-days for assessment days, and this is 6 half-days.
Okay, so just forewarned, we really pushed hard to get rid of that many half-days. So whether we ask PTO leadership whether they feel comfortable with it, I'm just saying, we tried really hard to get rid of that many half-days. So going back to it leaves me a little bit concerned. Especially because we know, like on Halloween, I hear you on what you're saying on that. Makes sense to me. The kids are disrupted anyhow because of everything that's going on. So it's not really a learning day.
Right.
But to cut into that many learning days is problematic to me, and that's why we stopped doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we need that many?
Well, I think what we've been doing over the past years is we've been using substitute teachers that we schedule ahead of time so that we can have things like vertical teams or a first grade meeting or a math and focus training or, fishbowl lessons or something like that. And we just can't get the sub coverage to be able to do that. I mean, we schedule trainers to come in to provide particular training, and then we might schedule 12 teachers to come out, and the day might result with 3 or 4 teachers being able to participate.
So doesn't that argue then to have more full day, to have 2 additional full days instead of a bunch of half days? Like, I don't understand that.
Well, the idea was to get 1 half day in each of the marking periods, which is what the principals felt would be more effective, spreading it out over the year with the 3 half days. The other thing is the full days, the count works out a little bit differently than it does if it's a half day, because with the half act 80 days, the students go home and they get credit for the full day.
Because I know, and therein lies my concern. We say it's 181 student days because we count these half days as part of that, but if we're real and honest with ourselves, not much learning happens on those half days. The kids come in, by the time they get unpacked, there's stuff going on. Those half days become not an educational day. And I struggle with counting that as a part of the 181. And that's, like I said, why we got away from it. So
no, it is a challenge, and ideally, the system that we used for quite a long time was fairly effective. You pulled out small groups of people that you really needed on a particular day, and you used sub coverage. It made it really nice because you could really focus on that small handful of people that you needed to work with that day instead of having 360 teachers to pay attention to. But it just with the sub situation, we have to be more creative than we've been in the past and try some things that are a little different.
And did you say that if this is something particular to this year's calendar that would change next year based on the math and focus training?
Particular to this year's calendar are those 2 full days that'll come back next year.
Okay.
So
2 full days or 2 half days?
The 2 full
2
days.
full days,
Yeah,
okay.
The 6th and
The
April
6th and,
2nd.
okay, right, sorry.
Yeah, but that won't address the half day. So, so what's different, Patty, is I just think there's more things that they need to do as a team. And so that's where the rub is in the elementary school, is to get the right people together in the room. Otherwise, you have to have sub coverage, and that's been problematic.
okay, fair enough. But if you did 1 full day off, and the morning is spent a half day with the teachers doing whatever they were going to do on half day number 1, and the other half day is whatever they were going to do on half day number 2, that way then the kids don't have 2 full days where they're totally interrupted.
Well, but so most of what goes on here is the team discussing the progress of individual students, so that can't actually all happen. It needs to be throughout the calendar year.
Well, some of that I understand, but I just heard that professional development's happening on some of these
Some
half
professional
days.
development and some collaboration time.
So maybe instead of having a half day dedicated to professional development, do a full day off somewhere on the calendar, appropriate to do a half morning of working on a student's assessment, and the afternoon working on the professional development. That way the kids really only miss 1 day of school instead of 2 half days, which are not educational days in my experience.
So you're suggesting that instead of having the 3 half-day assessment days and 3 half-day collaboration days, that we just take the 3 assessment days and make them full days?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, and put them as close to a weekend as possible so that parents can accommodate for that.
And then go 3 more days in June.
Well, no,
No,
because
we
you
wouldn't
haven't
have to do
addressed,
that.
you haven't adjusted your 181.
Yeah.
So 3 full days off really means you're 181. If you're counting 181, and that includes 6 half days,
Right.
right? So now go back to, instead of having 6 half days, have 3 full days off. That means the kids are in the classroom 3 extra days,
Right, okay.
full time.
So-
And
Yeah,
the
but the
staff
ca-
is
doesn't the
given
count-
dedicated
But
time to do the
but we
work
have to
that
go
they
3
need
more
to do.
days later
But
in
the
June.
count gets,
No, because you're still
They're counted as,
181.
no, they're counted as days. Half days are counted as days.
Yeah, okay, well,
That's why.
well.
The only challenge with that, and we could do that, the only challenge with that is
Yes.
because the assessment days really can't be moved. They're aligned with the opening of the teacher grading system,
Right.
those kinds of things.
Okay.
So if we considered that, we could take the 3 that are collaboration days. So for instance, you would take Halloween, and then that would be a back to a school day, and November 14th would become a full day off. that really has to be November 14th because you see the following week.
Yeah,
We have
right. I got
conferences,
it.
grades have
I
to
got
be
it.
in, those
Uh-huh.
types of things. Now, of course, I don't have them labeled on here anymore. But the same thing would have to happen. It would have to be the half-day collaboration day would have to fold in with the assessment day, which is not always super convenient, but looks like the other two might be on a Friday.
But the thing for me is, I'm definitely dedicated to getting that time for the teachers to get the time
Yeah.
that they need. But to say that we're going to have 6 half-days of the 181 is definitely, what we're really saying is the kids are not going to be in front of the teachers for 3 days. And that's problematic. So I'd say try and combine. Maybe we find a happy medium on this, but to go back to 6 half-days is completely a reversal of what we fought to do.
Maureen,
Yes.
the 6 half-days count as full days.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make
We'd have to go back and recount.
Just what Lydia is
Yeah.
saying.
You're going to be
Yeah.
3
days short.
You're going to be 3 days later in June. That's what I said.
Yeah, you did. I heard you.
Well, if that's the interest of the committee, I mean, I'm happy to go back and give it a try and
What we're talking
recount.
about is, if you look at the calendar then, really, so the first day of school is the 5th. So the first day of school is the 5th, and the last day of school is
14.
the 14th, which is 3 days earlier than we have been doing for the last, it is 3 days that the
it's
kids are not in
late.
front of teachers. That's not late. No, it's not. We've been well into the teens.
We usually get out fairly late, yeah.
Yeah, we do, and that's because we got rid of the half-days, and we stopped counting them as whole days. That's why. So, I mean, if we want to really be honest
I know
about
what
what
you're
we're
thinking.
supposed to be doing is 180, right. I mean, but our obligation is to make sure our kids are in front of teachers for educational time as much of 180 days as is responsible and able to do. Now, we have to take some days off for professional development and for the assessment stuff, I get that. But we're not doing that by having all these 6 half days. So that would be mine. I would really prefer you go back and see if there's a way to trim them out and combine them so that
Wait,
the
so
kids
you know where
are
we're
in
going to
front
end
of the
up?
teachers.
That's an interesting point. We're going to end up with elementary going 3 days longer than the rest of than
No,
middle and
no,
high
They
school.
all
we
go
can
together.
I can figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure
You're
it
going to
out.
have everybody off
Yeah.
on those
If that's
days.
your preference, I'll go back and rework it. You
You're
get,
going to be going 3 extra days too.
no, it shouldn't.
No,
No, it
longer.
doesn't end up that way, though. But it has not been that way. They've
What-
all finished at the same time.
There's alchemy that you can do here? You keep saying there are ways I can work it out. Like, give us a hint here.
No, I think if we go back and combine those days, and then I'll talk to Byron and see if, we can still put in to get Act 80. We can still put in to get credit for some of the full days and count them,
Okay.
okay? Is that your preference?
When do we have to approve the
We-
calendar?
I'd like to approve at this month's business meeting.
But when do we have to approve it?
Oh, I don't know, the day before school starts? I mean, we've never had a hard and fast deadline as far as approving it. Actually, I think we're probably a month earlier than we were last year.
So I'd rather see the work to try and figure out how to minimize these half-days. That's what I'm asking of the committee.
Anybody else? No?
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Before you got here, I went down the line of questioning about the feeling as if we're counting too many half days as educational days.
Sorry,
So,
so maybe I should have compared notes with you before.
well, no. I mean, we had that discussion, although I did not go.
It's just
I didn't take it to the next level. You just did.
Sorry.
All right, but I do think, I hear your point, but I do think that we've had pushback by how late we go in the year anyway, because people have wanted to start camp when the private schools start camp, and we've had kids not come our last week of school because they've already booked stuff. So if we go later in the year, I do not think that's going to be popular. And I hear what you're saying.
No, I can work around it. We can move a professional development day to the end of the year, and there are some other things
There's other stuff like that.
that we can work on.
Yeah, because we usually had front-loaded and rear-loaded the professional development days in a number of those calendars.
Yes.
Which right now, all right, so you've got that whole first week.
Yes, and we've been trying not to do that in recent years because the professional development days at the end of the year, while 1 or 2 is great to kind of kick off a new
Right,
program
but
or something,
4
is like,
Right.
that's a lot for the end of
I
June.
hear you.
And you have a couple snow days and you get a few more.
Typical to build one snow day into the calendar, is that right?
Either do 1 or some. We've done 1 or 2 in the past.
Yeah, so that's 2 is more what I remember. All right. So we're vulnerable for that anyway, because the truth is we had a mild winter this year. How often do we get 2 of those in a row?
I think the administration can certainly look at this more closely, but it is a challenge because especially when we look at our math and focus program, the time that's needed for the proper professional development, and it can't always be done just at the beginning of the year, I think is the challenge, or at the end of the year, the time that just you're recognizing that time throughout the year is critical. And I don't know how much work has been done. It seems like a lot of work has been done to communicate to the PTOs to find out what was their feelings on some of these half days. So I think we could go back and rework it, but we could also look at it from a standpoint too and say, if we, and I want us to still understand more, if we did something a little different last year, we could evaluate how it's gone over, if it's effective time.
It's been for a number of years.
Yeah.
A number, like 4 or 5 years.
Since we've gotten rid of the half days? Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Tony Costello was here the last time Tony Costello was here was when we did it. So it's been a long time since we did that. And while I truthfully respect the fact that we're talking to the PTO leadership, having been PTO leadership, that doesn't mean that the broad brush of parents feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because it really depends. If you're a working parent, 6 half days is really problematic. On top of all the other time off. So that's, that was part of the reasoning why we did it. But the real reason was to make sure the kids were in the classroom 180 days.
Sure.
So,
Oh, okay, good. All right.
so thank you. I appreciate
Thank
if
you.
you look at that.
Let's talk about something else.
You thought that was easy.
I did think that was
Sorry.
easy.
All right, item number 2, religious exemption from
Okay.
state testing.
So I just wanted to spend a few minutes, this shouldn't take long, to go over the request for religious excusal from state assessments. So I gave you a handout as part of your board packet on Friday that outlined the procedure that we went over with principals regarding responding to parents who request a religious exemption from state assessments. So I just put up a few of the highlights here. There is one reason for a parent to opt their child out of a state assessment, and that is by requesting a religious exemption. And parents who want to pursue that, they are required to come into the building and take a look at the assessment itself, which means that it has to occur pretty close to the testing window within about 2 weeks but before the start of testing. And then after the parent does that, and if they decide that they have a religious exemption, they need to draft a letter to address to the superintendent and hand it to the principal in order to request that particular exemption. I wanted to give you a little preview on March 1st. I had mentioned that we're going to be having this joint PTO meeting, and this is one of the topics that the parents are interested in discussing, not just the idea of religious exemption, but the idea of, well, what is the test and why is it important? So you'll notice one of the things that we've posted on the website and also was in your handout is that, we do have a Common Core aligned curriculum. We do teach to the state standards. Our materials are aligned to the standards, and we feel that our students are very prepared to participate in both the PSSA and the Keystone Assessment, those students who qualify. Obviously, we respect the rights of those who want to exercise this option under Chapter 4, but we also hope that when we have our joint PTO meeting on March 1st, that we can take a little bit more time to talk to parents about the information that we get from the assessment and the information that teachers are able to use. So even if only 10 students at the whole middle school took the assessment, there is still data that comes back to those teachers about those 10 students that's very usable in the classroom. So I don't want to repeat everything we're going to talk about that day, but I did bring just a little snapshot, and I asked Kelly if she would just go over just a little snapshot of what we're going to show parents on March 1st to give you an idea of the kind of information that students who participate in the state assessment are able to benefit from.
As Dr. McQuiggan mentioned, one of the most important aspects of this assessment system is that it is one piece of data in our entire assessment system. And that's really how we're trying to present our data. That, of course, the PSSA data is important, but so is our in-classroom assessments, so are our other benchmark assessments. So each one of those help inform our instruction and help drive where we're going. But again, mentioning the PSSA report, we can toggle down a lot further with the data that we receive so that we can get a lot of information that can be usable in the classroom. For example, this particular student sample data, you're looking at a 5th grade student, and at an initial snapshot we get a proficient report that just indicates how the student's doing in proficiency. But we have the ability to toggle down into what's called the assessment anchors, really what are students expected to know and understand by each grade. And you can see in the first orange box there that indicates the overall proficiency. But if you go ahead and click again, and you target in on the top assessment anchor, this now drills down a little bit more to some more specific information. In this example, you can see that this particular student might have been about 78% proficient or percent correct in this assessment anchor. But when you look at the specific data, the first anchor refers to understanding place value system, where the student has a percent correct of about 64%, but 100% on the second assessment anchor. This is data that really helps us because those are very different strands. One is looking at performing operations with multi-digit whole numbers, and the other is understanding place value. This is something that's very tangible that we can now take into the classroom and really understand where the student's strengths and weaknesses are instead of an overall proficiency. If we go to the doctor and we're told that we have an 80% health, it doesn't give us much information. This allows us to really drill down further into that. If you click to the next box, if you look at what's the information that's in this box, you can see that in this strand the student had about 60% correct. But again, you can see the disparity between the different topics that fall within that that particular anchor. So the top one refers to graphing points on a coordinate plane, and the second one is a completely different topic, which is classifying two-dimensional figures. So even though we have about 60% correct, this data is showing us that perhaps we need to strengthen for this student their understanding of two-dimensional figures, but when it refers to graphing points on a coordinate plane, they're pretty solid. So again, we really stress that the data that we get, it's really important that as a teaching staff we convert this to information and really talk about what this is telling us. What is it telling us about each student? What is it telling us about our classroom? Perhaps we can take this information and look back at our curriculum and say, well, maybe we didn't hit that topic well enough, so we need to make some adjustments there. But maybe we did cover that really well, and that may be an area that we just need to target for the student and really get down to that level. So again, I think what's really important about the data that we receive is that this is one piece of the puzzle within the entire assessment system. We need to take this data that we receive from the PSSAs and compare that to our MAP testing, compare that to our benchmark assessments, compare that to our teacher created assessments, and see what is the picture that this is painting for the students. What are the students' needs based on the entirety of that system?
Are we still doing, because the ERB test results were very much like that, which I actually really appreciated, being able to see the individualized scores. Are we still, I know we got MAP and we've got PSSAs. Are we doing anything with ERBs? Sorry, I'm asking that question.
The only thing we still do is we still use the ERB writing practice program at the high school.
Okay.
But that's about it. The advantage of the MAP over the ERB, of course, was the opportunity to do out-of-level testing. So right. Whether you're testing a special education student or a gifted student, any type of student can have a meaningful experience with the NWE MAP assessment.
So we have eliminated ERB elsewhere?
Yes, the writing Great. We eliminated and the CTP4. Kathy Blood still uses the writing practice program.
Okay.
And what's also nice with the MAP too is that it also correlates to Compass Learning, so we can now have very individually directed learning plans for students based on the results, which are also connected to the similar targets as PSSAs.
So this is what you're going to be explaining to parents at the meeting with regards to why it's important to take the PSSAs if they're considering dropping out or taking their child out because of religious
Well,
reasons.
and the goal on March 1st is really just to make sure that accurate information is out there for all
Okay.
of our parents. I mean, in speaking with the PTO representatives ahead of time, some of the questions are like, are we going to lose millions of dollars if 10 more kids don't take the test? There are a lot of, urban myths or rumors or whatever you want to call it that are out there. So I think a deeper understanding of the assessment, a better understanding of, how it benefits individual students, I think all of those things will help everyone to make an informed decision.
Is there anything that we're doing for the parents that cannot come to that event or do not come to that event?
We hadn't planned anything specific.
Because to me, that's going to be the majority of parents. Is there something that we could do to better, to take what you're doing
Yeah.
here and kind of...
I mean, we've taped it in the past. We've done, kind of voiceover recordings and posted them and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could do something like that just to make it more available.
Yep. We also talked about the idea of trying to reach out to some of those families. Thank you. Some of those families that have chosen not to have their children participate, and try to reach out to them in the past just to let them know, here's the information about how this data is used, because we do think there has been, as you said, a lot of urban myths.
Yeah, there are
about,
definitely misconceptions about.
So we could certainly look to do something like that.
And also, can you just clarify the difference between last year and this year in terms of our approach to this as a district?
Well, this year we've gotten together ahead of time with our administrators and set up a very specific procedure that everyone understands and everyone is going to follow. There was some late released information last year that came out in the assessment coordinator's handbook that was open to some interpretation.
Okay.
But that interpretation has been clarified. So
it's a tighter process that's in place.
Well, and the other challenge last year was, students parents continued to request reviewing the materials, like even after the testing had begun, and it really made the process quite disruptive. While you're trying to run the testing sessions for all of the other students in the building, it's very, very difficult to also manage this whole other parallel process. So we've advertised it earlier. It's been in the Radnor Reader for the last 2 weeks. It's posted on the website. We've shared it with the PTOs at the PTO sessions. We'll do it again on March 1st. And the goal is to have all of this take place during those 2 weeks, because, again, we can't start the process until the booklets are actually in the building for people to review. But we need to close that opportunity 3 days before the test starts, so that the administrators feel like they can get their booklets out, get their sessions scheduled, and get the job underway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have some procedural questions.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with the process. I just want to make sure I understand. So this is a district policy. This isn't the state policy.
Most of this comes from the state.
It comes from the state.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm interested in excusing my child for religious reasons, I must go in to review it.
Yes, that's the first step.
And then if I conclude that there's a conflict with my religion, I have to send in a letter. Do I have to elaborate? Do I just say?
No elaboration. You just request the exemption. Email. Okay. You can write the note right there while you're reviewing the materials.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we'll hear more about that on March 1st. And like I mentioned, we're going to have sort of a meet and greet thing at 6:30. Time to have some conversations about some of these different topics and hear some more feedback from our parents. The other thing we promised for this month, which we also did last year, is a mid-year update on our department goals. Not our individual goals, but the 3 large goals that our department is focused on.
So we're now to agenda item number 3.
yeah.
Before you jump, can
Yeah.
I just ask one other question?
Sure.
As you're having that discussion with parents, so for those parents who choose to have their children not take the test, what do we tell the parents those children will be doing during the time at which the test is being taken?
They will participate in alternate academic activities that will be overseen
But
by
that'll be something you're going to spell out at this meeting for parents so that they understand that.
And it was, obviously it's a little different for elementary students versus middle school students. And obviously at the high school, if you don't take a Keystone, you go to class. So that's really easy. But, our sheer numbers at the middle school last year posed a little bit of a challenge with that, because it takes quite a bit of staff to administer the test itself. Lots of students are eligible for small group testing and things like that, so that we don't have a lot of teachers hanging around to...
No, but I think there were some expectations of parents that students would be doing certain
Yes.
instructional type things, which we are not equipped to be able to
Yes.
do because.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that's an
Last year-
element of what you're going to be
Yeah,
describing
and last year
for
we
parents.
generated a menu, and we can share that menu with them on March 1st, and certainly we can go over that again.
Yeah, just
with
setting
middle
those
school.
expectations, right?
Yeah, but it's not a field trip or artist in residence or anything like that. It's
I'm with you.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
We all done here?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, agenda item number
Okay.
3.
Agenda item number 3. So we're not going to go into this in great detail because you do have a copy in front of you. The three goals that we were working on as a department this year. Number 1 was working together with our fellow administrators to realign some of the responsibilities. We lost 3 folks in our department, Joan Casano for instructional technology and Joe Canella for data and achievement, and also one of our clerical folks upstairs. So we spent some time really looking closely at those positions, articulating what it is that each position was responsible for, and evaluating whether or not those tasks should continue to take place in our department, or if they might be better addressed maybe at the building level or in a different department. So anyway, during this first part of the year, we obviously spent some time articulating those, creating those lists, and as you know, we have a part-time person in place upstairs 2 days a week who's helping us out with some of the data and achievement position responsibilities, and the DCIU has also completed an audit for us of that particular position, identifying what kind of the must-have tasks are, the things we need to do to complete our obligations with PDE, and some of the other tasks that might be nice to have but not fit onto the must-have list. So anyway, where we are now is we have redistributed the duties so that the departments can function, the district can function, and the schools can function, and we also have the audit information ready, and then we're hanging on to that information until we spend some more time working with Mr. Batchelor and talking about what staffing will look like for us as a district. So that's where we are with number 1. Number 2 is developing action plans with comprehensive plan. And as you know, the early part of this year, we spent some time at the business meetings looking at the comprehensive plan, collected some additional feedback. I had some additional meetings with some board members, and we did approve that through the board and also submit it to PDE. So over the next 6 months, we'll be working with the administrators through our educational council to develop building level plans, the first of which activity began last month, and also our teachers through our professional development task force also began looking at professional development using George Corris's book. He's going to be one of our speakers next year, and talking about how professional development can best be aligned to comprehensive planning goal 1. So over the next several months, we will be following our plan with our administrators in order to create these building level plans that will be finished up at our retreat this summer, and finalizing and publishing those sometime in July. And then the third goal is the systematizing of our curriculum cycle. So I know that we've all been very excited that we have followed it year after year after year. And just as important with our curriculum cycle are, as the things that we do are the things that we don't do. And we've really appreciated your support in being able to focus on specific areas, to focus our efforts, to focus our professional development, and to focus our budgets to move the areas forward that are in cycle, and to kind of put on hold some of those things that might be of interest, or the shiny coins, or whatever people want to call them, so that we can maintain that focus. So this year we have 3 areas in audit. We're working on language, arts, gifted, and theater, and listed some of those activities. And as you know, Dr. Murray has been maintaining the implementation program for Math in Focus, and we're also implementing quite a few different initiatives in science and STEM in the middle school program as well. So I won't go through the list of little details you see there, but you'll notice there on the list of remaining tasks, we will be continuing with the audit. The surveys are out, the results are in. I met with the third group today to look at the language arts results. I worked with special ed at the high school. Typically, we don't bring bring the full recommendations forward until the following fall. So we are beginning to look at particular research-based programs, and what we'll be doing is we'll be taking the information that we looked at in November from our 10 years of historical data in that area. We'll be taking the feedback from teachers and parents on the survey, and then we'll be taking our look at the research-based materials and whatnot that are out there and finding the intersection of those three things to make a decision about what types of changes or modifications we would be interested in making in language arts. We don't expect any sweeping changes. We just did quite a bit of curriculum writing about 5 years ago, but obviously there are areas that we'd like to bring a little bit more up to date and give a little bit more polish to.
So question,
Yeah.
with regards to the budgeting process then, are there placeholders in the budget for these
Yes.
3 areas, and they're based on what?
They're based on some of our initial research. For instance, we know absolutely that we have to make some changes, some special ed adjustments to some of the resource materials we use to keep up with some, the newer best practices, particularly in special education. And we know that there will be some curriculum writing time. We have some teachers that are chomping at the bit to get back in those curriculum documents and do some more work, particularly with things like integrating technology. And I know Janae's department was talking today about going back into the curriculum documents that we created from scratch before, and adding some of this polish and some of these specific types of things that they're interested in having in there. So I have curriculum money in. I have some placeholders. Some of the materials we'll need to purchase for special education. I think I estimate about $50,000.
Okay.
So yes, placeholders.
And in this process, you're circling back to be sure that whatever we've implemented as a result of the initial last time around on these areas, that we are deploying that across all schools where appropriate, equally.
Yes.
We're doing an assessment of where we are in terms of the delivery of the.
Yes, and November 6th, which is our vertical team day, we had a team of teachers from K to 12 look at quite a bit of data regarding where we've been. But we've also, in several of our recent conversations, particularly with the principals, is looking at some of these classrooms, groupings, programs where we've been getting really phenomenal results and getting a better handle on exactly what the things are happening in those particular locations. Is it just, Mrs. Smith is a great teacher, or Mrs. Smith has a great program, or Mrs. Smith has a great group of kids? So, teasing those things out can be challenging, but we do believe that we're recognizing some common themes that, again, can be shared, obviously, across the buildings and across programs.
And we're still up at the curriculum level, not down at lesson plan.
No, it's all unit plans.
Okay.
Jim, do you want to add anything about theater or gifted?
No, similarly, in Gifted, we're taking a look at our program in 3 major areas: identification of gifted students, programming for gifted students, and then the GIP process. So that's the work that primarily I've been working with the teachers of gifted learners with on a monthly basis. We've also involved the school psychologists because they're involved with our gifted identification and also some recommendations around the IQ testing that we do as part of that process. So we're sort of moving in towards programming, and we'll be looking at GIPs before the end of the year and possibly into the beginning of next year.
And this is K to 12?
This is K to 12. That's right. Yeah, and surveys were distributed in return from parents and teachers K through 12 as well.
Can you share the results of those surveys with us?
When we do our audit report, we'll be sharing a lot of those themes, similar to what we did in math.
Okay.
Yeah, usually that comes out in October. Is when we usually present that.
October.
Yeah, that's typically when we present the audit findings to the committee.
With regard to the theater department, we already heard earlier that we're discontinuing the summer theater program. Is that linked in with this, or is that a completely separate animal?
It's separate. When we talk about the theater curriculum audit, we're primarily
Yeah.
talking about the high school courses that are part of our theater department. We have one theater teacher, K through 12. Now, there's certainly other theater things going on throughout the district with plays and musicals and the summer theater program, but typically they're extracurricular, not part of the curriculum itself. Not to say that they won't come up in the audit as part of the conversation when we're thinking about what we're doing K through 12, but the primary focus and really the person who's most involved with this is the one theater teacher at the high school. So it's a little bit smaller scale than certainly English language arts audit or anything that goes beyond just one building.
Okay.
I have a question about the first goal, really about the remaining tasks, and and Ken, your involvement in them, have you had time to give thought to recruiting, screening, hiring, open positions, and the whole system, or do you need some time to digest more?
90 days.
I have had some time to digest it, and I'm continuing to. So, I mean, I think that's part of the process right now is to look at what is the staffing we have right now, and then what also makes this the most sense as we move forward. As I've shared with the administrative team, I mean, clearly we had some unfinished business with our last, restructuring and some of those changes. So, yes, there's been some time, but I still, am excited that there's still some more time to evaluate and look at that as well.
Do you think like end of June is a timeline for that, or?
I think that with the board, I would like to try to, and I think as Mrs. Booker just said, 90 days, give an update. So after my 90 days, give the board an update and say, here's where I am with the assessment, and share with the board at that time, the status of that assessment. And some of it might involve, these are pieces we need to look in further. These are pieces where, we can make a move now. This is a piece where it might need a little bit more time. I mean, it's kind of wide open right now on where that will be. But at the conclusion of 90 days, I'd like to do that.
Thank you.
And one final question. You mentioned this also in your opening remarks, Maureen, about who's doing the library diversity audit?
The librarians.
The librarians? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you know what the criteria are for that?
That's what they're going to talk about next month.
That's all? Okay.
Yeah.
So
they're developing criteria together. They have, there's a diversity person that they're working with from the University of Pennsylvania. What and I don't want to get too far into it because we'll talk about it in great detail next month, but, sometimes we can be reactionary in a collection. It's like, oh, I have, a family in this particular situation. Let's run out and buy 10 books about this topic or whatever. We want to start to be a little bit more proactive with that and say, what do our collections look like? What audiences can we reach? Are there any particular diverse audiences that maybe our collections aren't reaching? And this is an opportunity for them to do that.
Fiscal conservatives.
This is just informational, and I should know this. So you're driving the gifted and the theater. Who's doing the English language?
I'm language arts.
And you're carrying that because that's your thing.
Yeah. Math and STEM.
Yeah, I knew that. So have you got enough time to do all this? Because this is a big piece.
It's a big content, but I don't think, like I said, I don't think we're going to have a major overhaul in language arts. So
yeah, I'm just remembering last time, but I hear you. It's
but
not going
to be the second time
much.
around.
Yeah, this is the second time around. And remember, we have our literacy coaches and our reading specialists, and they're a great deal of help. They really will be meeting again tomorrow, and I met with them on Friday, so we'll be fine.
Can I ask a question with regards to the strategy? So back when we didn't have the full curriculum documented, clearly we're just trying to get the curriculum documented at the unit level. But down to the lesson plan level, not that there has to be one lesson plan for every subject across all the classrooms, but are we moving towards, is there a philosophy towards moving towards having written lesson plans? The teachers actually are needing to have written lesson plans?
I would say...
What's the game plan there?
No.
That's not part of what you're doing in this curriculum cycle?
No, and it's not, we don't really see it as part of what's really necessary for our teachers to be able to deliver an effective curriculum. What we have done, particularly at the elementary level, is we have it down to the learning target level.
Okay.
So a teacher will know that, in this next unit that I'm doing, there might be 12 learning targets. So all students have to be able to master these 12 particular learning targets before we move on to the next unit. And they adjust their instruction and differentiate based on the learning targets. It's almost like a lesson plan because you know what the outcome is. But it still gives our teachers, the freedom that they really are interested in to use different types of literature, to use different approaches, to spend one day on a target or to spend a week on a target, depending on who the students are in front of them.
But a lesson plan in the form of knowing what your end target needs to be is okay too. I mean,
if they would write a lesson plan.
I'm just trying to understand down to the teacher level,
Yeah.
down that one layer lower than unit level. What
Right.
are we planning to do there?
So
if
at the
anything?
district level, with their support, what we develop is the unit plans and some of the learning targets. Mostly at the elementary level, we're developing the learning targets. And then the teachers develop whatever the particular lesson plan or the day-to-day plan is for their individual
Yeah, that's what I
students.
meant. Not that it's a district prescribed lesson plan, but that lesson plans of some sort are being put in place to underpin what's going on at the unit level. So whether an individual teacher is doing it or a group of teachers are working on something, there is something going on underneath that next layer down.
There certainly is evidence of planning based on the district materials that they use,
Okay.
both the
But it's
curriculum
not a
and the resources.
specific
No, it's not like
outcome that's
Friday.
being monitored within the
Exactly.
curriculum cycle. So this time around, I guess I'm having a tough time. I don't think I'm having a tough time explaining what I'm saying, but last time around, we were trying to get the 30,000-foot view, make sure we have everything kind of all mapped out. This time around, we're just tweaking that. We're not looking at the next layer to create like a district-wide lesson plan, like the next layer down.
We don't have any content areas where we
Okay.
have any. I guess Kelly can talk. You want to talk about maps a little bit?
The closest we have is we did create pacing guides, which, as Dr. McQuiggan was mentioning, not only indicates general pacing of the content, but has the learning targets and then connected to an assessment.
Okay.
And we give teachers kind of a window, a framework with that. And we're doing that with Math and Focus in particular right now. Not where each classroom is expected to be on the exact same lesson every day, because that doesn't give the teachers the flexibility to adjust instruction as needed for their students. But we do have approximately 17 unit assessments that are common across all classes for elementary and middle school, and then specific learning targets by unit that are then used within the classroom as well.
So that's the framework, the what, and the how the teachers do it is still up to them how they do it, which I'm totally cool with. I'm not questioning that. I'm just trying to understand what is it that the outcome is. But that sounds like, thank you, that's helpful to understand.
And I think it might be worth mentioning another way that that the audit may influence classroom practice more directly than just the unit plans or the curriculum documents is if we identify areas for professional development as a result of the audit, because that's going to directly affect the teachers and their practices on a classroom level on a daily basis as well. So it's not a lesson plan, but it does go beyond that 30,000-foot view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
And
it could
that's-
influence what that framework needs to be.
Exactly.
If it's missing targets or whatever. Okay.
And the first blush through the survey results on Friday was dividing the survey results into those exact categories. Where is it that professional development might resolve this common issue? Where is it that instructional materials might need to be adjusted? And where is it that the curriculum document or some other type of common assessment or whatnot might need to be adjusted?
Excellent. Thank
Does
you.
that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, item number 4, English learners.
English learners. Okay, so I gave you a handout about English language learners, and as part of our language arts audit, so we're looking at English language arts K-12, we're also looking at library, and we're also looking at our English language learner program. Previously, they were called ELL students. Now they're switching over to EL students, so you'll see I'm trying to update the terminology here so we can become more comfortable with that. So in your handout, what I gave you is just a general summary about our obligations for our English learners. So any family who registers in the Radnor Township School District and reports on the home language survey that a language other than English is spoken in the home we evaluate those students. So we spend a lot of time doing that in the summer when quite a few of our students arrive in Radnor, and we also do it throughout the year. After those students are evaluated, a determination is made whether or not they qualify, and if they qualify for English language services, they receive support through our English language learning teachers, and they continue to stay in that English language program until they test out, and I can talk to you a little bit about that, and then they have to be monitored for 2 years after that. The state's actually going to be revising some of that information, and we're going to be required to monitor students for a longer period of time. But right now we monitor students for 2 years, and then after that they go to what's called an 05 designation in PIMS, which means we're no longer monitoring them, but we still have a little tag on their record letting us know that at one time they were identified as an English language learner. Right now in our 3 elementary schools, we have 3.0 EL teachers. At the middle school, we have a 0.7 teacher who also works 0.3 as a gifted teacher. And at the high school, we have a 0.6 EL teacher who 0.4 works as a Spanish teacher. So those 2 positions work out really nicely because they have some dual certifications and they're able to kind of ebb and flow with the EL population. Some of their responsibilities include direct instruction for students that are identified as English learners. They support the families in whatever types of support they might need as a family new to the school school district, new to the culture. They also coach teachers and help teachers modify curriculum. They adapt materials. They assess the students both when they arrive here in the district and then also annually. We just finished our most recent testing window. And then we do have some obligations for school-wide professional development. So there's some school-wide professional development we are required to do, and then also our EL teachers will provide some additional professional development based on what they think would most benefit the students that they work with in their individual buildings. Some of the other services we provide for them, as you know, we've had a summer literacy program for our English language learner students for a very long time. Before I was here, we had it. We pay for it through Title III funds. We bring in all of our students who are identified as English learners. So if they're getting direct services, if they're on monitor, and almost all of our students do attend, even the ones that don't even receive the EL classes anymore. So they come in the summer for 4 weeks. They have 4 half days, and we group them in kind of cross-sections grouped, and they work on the can-do descriptors. And usually when camp is over, I talk to you about what those numbers look like and the kinds of things that they did. We also run a summer WAP testing program. One of the things we found out about 4 years ago is if we wait until the school year starts in order to start testing our students who have reported that another language is spoken in the home, it's often the end of September before we can start providing any services. So all these teachers are doing is testing and testing and testing. So we do use some of our Title III money, and a lot of the students are already here at the camp. So we pull them out of the camp, or we bring them in the afternoon, and we test them in the summer. So those are the 2 additional services. I gave you a chart. About 5 years ago, we did a country count, as we call it in ELL, to see where are the students who are English learners in Radnor coming from. And that's just a little snapshot of it on the screen, but the complete report is in your packet. And you'll notice that the students from South Korea, China, Vietnam, and Japan have declined over the past 5 years. Students are now arriving from Oman, Belgium, Nepal, the Congo, Kuwait, Venezuela, Greece, and Russia, the countries that were previously unrepresented. And then the other, I think, very notable thing is that our new group now is English learners born in the United States. So even if you're born in the United States, if you have a primary language at home other than English, they still qualify to be assessed, and we have had students qualify for services even though they were born here. So that's something that's a little unique about our population. But you can take a look, a nice wide array of countries, and as you can imagine, a wide array of languages that our EL teachers work with. The other piece of data I gave you is a sheet that almost looks like our calendar. These are our October 1 counts, and I just put a couple bullet points up here just to point you to a few of the themes that pop out from the calendar. Those are not grade levels in the column 01, 03, 04, 05 are our PIMS codes. So students in the yellow receiving 01 services are our ELL students who receive direct services. So they go and see the ELL teachers several times per week. Students in 03 and 04 are being monitored year 1 and year 2, and then students in 05 are students who have been exited from ELL, but again, that's that little tag that we still have. So one of the things that you'll notice is the number of students receiving services has remained fairly consistent over the last 10 years. We have an average of about 92 with a high of 106 and a low of 88. So that's what you'll see in the yellow numbers there across the different buildings. Across the district, it ends up to be fairly consistent from year to year. We receive an average of about 30 new enrollees per year, so about 30 students are coming in. Many of them come in over the summer. We usually test somewhere between 20 and 25 over the summer. And the total number of EL students in Radnor has increased over the past 10 years from 147 to 224. So you'll notice that green number, those are the total number of students on our rolls tagged for ELL. So one of the things you'll see is that even though we have 80 extra students on our rolls who are ELL, we still have the same number of students receiving the direct services. So a conclusion we could draw here is that we are probably doing a pretty good job getting those students into ELL, they're acquiring those can-do descriptors, and they're exiting out through access testing, and then they're moving into either that 03 and 04 category. The other thing is you'll notice that the 5 years ago, the most recent 5 years versus the furthest 5 years, we have fewer students who are leaving the district than we did the first 5 years, if that makes sense. So the total number of students receiving direct services has not increased significantly because the students have tested out of ELL and again joined the ranks of the 03s, the 04s, and the 05s.
So I just want to make a comment because I have heard in this community the myth that ITHN has the majority of the EL students, and that is not the case anymore. And in fact, it's curious to learn that it's actually Ratner Elementary, and almost double if you look at 2015-16, the other two schools. So
yes.
Interesting.
And very interesting, in 12-13, Radnor Elementary started the year with 3 ELL students. We didn't even know if we could how we would get a teacher over there, because if they're in different grades and different times and whatnot, you can see by October they had 8. But then they have just kept growing and growing and growing. So yes, it's a well-dispersed population across the district.
Does it matter in English language instruction what the original language is?
For the ELL program?
Yeah.
No.
So you don't do anything differently for a student who comes in speaking Spanish, of which, I don't know, I ticked up about 17 if you looked at the country of origin. So someone who comes in speaking Spanish is treated the same way that someone who comes in speaking some form of Arabic.
Correct. So the English language teachers have a list of what we call the can-do descriptors that they work on. They're basically a set of English language acquisition standards.
Okay.
And based on what tier a student is on, we work on a different cluster of standards. So most often, like in the summer, we like to group them based on their tiers. So we try to group all the Tier 1 kids together and all the Tier 2 kids together because they're working on similar skills.
Okay. And what does WAPT stand for?
That's the WIDA Access Placement Test.
Okay. Thanks.
All right?
Question.
Yes.
So on my way over here, I passed the Church of the Savior, and they have a huge banner out that says English Language Learners Program for
Adults.
Parents and Students, which made me think about, is there any sort of collaboration that goes on? And then I've thought about universities that have asked to collaborate with us on other things, and I was wondering if this is a ripe area, and is there cross services in terms of acculturating people with, who are coming from other countries? Could you talk about that whole?
So we do partner with one of the local churches. I'm not going to remember the lady's name right now, but we do partner with one of the local churches, and most often we refer our parents, particularly when parents are new to the country. They do reach out to us a couple times a year and say, do you have any new families who have just come to the country? We'd like to welcome them. At one time, we used to offer English language adult classes, even here in this building. I think they offer them all at the church now. I think that, it's just more convenient for them because that's kind of their home base. And then our teachers, our EL teachers, are also part of a culture club, and they do have, a couple events a year, probably not a lot, but maybe 2 dinners a year where they try to, bring families together and do some of those things. And then our EL teachers also do some outreach, both formally and informally, with our parents to welcome them and try to connect them to some of the resources they're familiar with. But I would say probably the church is our closest connection as far as with the community supporting the families.
But no university connection at this time?
No.
Okay. And one more question.
Yeah.
The students who are the English learners born in the U.S., what language is that?
Many of them are, well, there's only, I think, 5, right? I think 3 of them are Spanish. I'm not sure I'm not sure about the other 2. I'd have to check on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing I included, a lot of people ask, do you belong to the consortium, and what about the IU? Can't they just come in and do your EL services for you? So as part of our ELL audit, our English Language Arts audit, these are some of the other things that we're looking at. We're comparing and contrasting what it's costing us and the product that we're delivering here at the district level using our own resources. And also we've gone back to the IU to take a look at what is it that they provide and what do they charge for it and what does it look like. We haven't completed that examination yet, but this will give you an idea of what the dollars and cents are regarding services through the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. The other piece that we have to tease out, that it's a little bit harder to tease out, is we do have very good results with our ELL students. We do move them in and out of the ELL program pretty quickly. They do pass the access test and they do move to monitor. We'd have to ask ourselves if we were using a different type of service and maybe if it wasn't as frequent or as intensive as what we're able to do, would we still get those same results? Because if we didn't and we ended up providing services for additional years, the cost savings wouldn't be as high as we would originally have anticipated. So those are some of the things that we're trying to compare to make sure that we're looking at apples and apples. Any other questions?
Is that it?
That's it.
Public comment. Public comment. At this time, if there's any second public comment, you're welcome to come forward. All right. Very well. Very well. We are adjourned. Early?
Thank you.
Often.